Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is What's Hot in Dynamics. You're now joining Merlin Schweiger, Liz McGlennon, and Ashley Steiner.
Oh, Merlin, your birthday.
You're not going to be mean to me and pick on me for being old.
We're not picking on you we're celebrating your birthday.
Could ignore it.
It's fine.
Like we ignore Merlin.
Wow. We can talk about it. I know. I feel old.
You are old.
Yeah, but okay, here's what I don't like about birthdays now is that I don't actually feel old, but then I have a birthday and then the number makes me think that I am old. And that's not fun to be like, but wait, I'm actually that old, but I don't feel that old, but apparently I am that old.
When did that start happening to you? Feeling that way?
I mean, probably last year when I turned 40.
I was just wondering how much time I have before you go with that. I mean, I can picture that, right? But it's about your mindsets. If you don't feel old most of the time, that's a good thing.
So does that mean you don't know how you actually look in your little sports car that you drive? Like in Father of the Bride when he gets his hair dyed and he's driving in his little car? No? No? Yeah.
Yes, I think that's true. Like, I have no idea how old I look because to borrow the term from the Matrix, my residual self-image is of like a 32-year-old me. And I don't really think of myself as being any older than that. So I probably imagine myself in my little sports car as like, oh yes, like this young man driving around in this old person sports car when apparently I am an old person. So I'm just fitting in to the stereotype. I don't know. But this don't have any gray hair.
I have gray hair.
My wife's getting gray hair. She's
I'm
blaming
sure
the
she
pandemic.
would
It
love
makes
for you
sense.
to announce that on the podcast.
I mean, she's got like one.
Named Merlin.
I'll have to ask her if she's named it.
I used to that's why I mean I like my hair better blonde anyways, but I had like dark brown hair maybe 5 years ago.
I remember that.
And that's when I you could see the gray and I was like, all right, I can't.
That's
I
true.
can't be
I feel
fun
like
anymore and just change my
gray
hair color.
hides a blonde hair better.
It does.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't have
you
any.
can't
I'm
bleach
just
it or
yeah.
anything, but it does blend. I
Yeah.
can thank my father for the gray hair. So
I like your hair better as blonde too.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think I have a strong opinion. I think your hair looks nice no matter what color it is.
Except for your comment earlier, Merlin.
I'm trying.
Ashley, what's
Trying to get back into good
your
graces.
residual self-image age? Is that what you called it, everyone? The age that you actually, your mind thinks you are?
Yeah, I've never seen The Matrix, so that's a lost term on me.
But you don't, the concept though,
with the new one coming out, the concept, yeah. But with the new Matrix coming out, it makes me want to actually watch all the Matrixes just to see. Anyways, total side topic.
You should watch them; they're good.
So it's funny that you asked that because I always I'm a manager now, right? I manage people. I own a home. I'm truly an adult, right? I guess those are but I don't think of myself as responsible enough to own a home and be responsible for people's livelihoods. But I am, right? Okay, I am,
right.
I'm love my job. I'm great, take care of my house. But so I would say maybe 19 because I just don't feel responsible for this stuff, but I do just fine. Isn't that weird? I don't know how.
No, I think that's legitimate. I honestly feel like my self-image age would be even younger if I didn't have children. It's hard to imagine yourself as a 20-year-old when you've got children running around. You're like, well, clearly I'm not that young.
Yeah, no, I can't. I could not have children.
But
I forget to feed my cat.
Don't worry. Children yell at you too when you forget to feed them. So built-in reminders.
Liz, what do you think yours is?
I don't know, late 20s, 27, 28. Probably.
So what'll be curious is as the both of you get closer to 40, if your self-image age will advance with your actual age, or are you going to like imagine yourself, Liz, as 27 until you hit like 50 and then be like, oh, well, maybe now I'm 30.
Well, from everyone I've ever talked to about this is that it doesn't actually progress. Like everyone has a different number and you just, that number kind of stays that number, even if you're like 50 or 60 years old. Like you just kind of pause somewhere and that's where your mental state is at, even if like your body disagrees or
That
your
really scares
lifestyle
me.
disagrees. Like if you have kids or whatever, where you like, you should be older than that, but
That
Right.
really scares me because I feel like 19, you're very irresponsible. So and not mature. And
you're worried you're gonna be stuck at 19 mentally now forever. I'm
yeah,
not
like I'm gonna
saying that that's true or scientific. I'm just saying, like, anecdotally from everyone I've talked to, like, they've never changed their number once they have a number.
Hmm.
But I could see like my it changing maybe if I have kids and just
or if I
feeling
get married, I could see
Yeah,
mine
yeah.
changing, right? Like being single,
Sure.
it's
yeah.
probably different.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. One of my grandmothers never aged past 29. Every year on her birthday, she would just celebrate the anniversary of her 29th birthday.
I had a
She
grandpa
was
that did
always
that.
29.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
That's
The cake
awesome.
always had, I don't know what his was. It was something like 29, but like always had that number of candles. Never knew how old he actually was.
It's like, it doesn't matter, 29.
I love it. That's so cool. I want to do that. Well, I mean, after that, your cake is gonna go up in flames. Like if you try to put more candles on it, right?
It's true.
So
Let's do the numbers.
When you
yeah.
gotta start getting the big blocky number candles, that's just really depressing.
Or you just do a cupcake now because whoever like think about it like COVID, like can you imagine that we used to eat cake after people blew out the candles on it?
But we've been doing that the whole time, like through COVID.
I know.
Well,
but,
we were
like-
fanning them out for a while, but now we're
but
back
you
to
know what I'm
blowing out the
saying? Like
candles.
people you barely know and they're like blowing out the can. I don't know.
No, it's gross.
There's
It's like,
lots
let me
of, like-
or how about little kids that like spit all over it?
I know. So now with my nephews, we like give them a cupcake so they can't like spit all over the cake. And like the other one that gets me is bowling. Like, can you imagine like now going and like putting your fingers in the holes of this ball that like thousands of other people have also done? Like,
Actually, you just need to have your own bowling ball,
oh,
obviously.
that's true. That's so true. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
It
COVID
is,
has made me
yeah.
like, I've always been a germaphobe, but like COVID has made me think of things like so differently.
I mean, I used to think that about bowling balls too, especially like the people who go bowling with the like the ball that they pick off the rack and they go bowling with it, and then they eat like finger food and they're like licking the salt from the fries off their fingers, just like, nope.
You
But then
guys
they
have
go
never
touch the
done that
ball.
though?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I've
No.
done that.
Yeah,
But
me
like
too.
now I would think about it and be like, oh my God, after I touch the bowling ball, I'm gonna sanitize my hands and then eat. You know what I mean? Like I think I would do things differently now.
Oh, I thought about that before, and I would be like, this hand touched the bowling ball. I'm only going to eat the fries with the other hand, or I'm going to wait to eat the fries and like wash my hands between. Would not do it. Grossed me out even
Liz lives out on the edge here.
then. Yeah.
She's like, I'm just gonna
You guys
take
are
my
like way
chances.
too OCD.
No, I'm just a germaphobe. Well, yeah, fine. That OCD comment is valid, but I also am a germaphobe. Like I know I am.
Liz is out there like doorknobs.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to someone that like still shares drinks with people even right now. So like, oh, let me try that or let me split this with you. So like, I'm not doing
Yeah,
that.
Well,
and
that's just
you know what's-
irresponsible.
I guess I don't think about that either because like when you go out to the bar, I split like everyone's always like, oh, what drink is that? And I'm like, here, try it.
Yeah, like
Alcohol
you
kills
do that all the
everything.
time, right?
Yeah, I still do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's weird. Maybe my
We have started to try to like drink out of different sides, like if it's a cup that you can do that in. But
Mhm.
other than that, there's been no adjustment.
Just make sure you have your booster.
I do. Yeah. I mean, I was sick last week from it, so I'm good.
That's good. I think we're like really grossing Merlin out.
Yeah.
You have kids, Merlin. Like, how does this
They're
like
so
this is the
germy.
same
I
conversation when
know.
we had about like my cat and Liz's dogs. Like you were so grossed out, but I'm like, you
So
literally
judgy.
have children.
I know. And I will admit that over the last, well, I guess probably 10 years now, I've gotten better about the idea of sharing things with other humans. But like for most of my life, I've been like, no, like I'm not going to take a drink out of your glass. That's your glass. I'm not drinking out of that. Like, doesn't matter if it's a different side. Like, nope. Yeah, no, it was only like much later in life that I've been like, okay, I think I'm okay with sampling your drink, even though it's yours.
Germs
been
are
a
good for
slow-
your immune system.
That is true.
My immune system is fine.
Okay.
Do you feel personally attacked by this conversation, Marilyn?
Oh,
How
it's
did we
fine.
even get on this conversation?
Yeah, I think it was the cake and the bowling balls. Sorry,
The
I totally derailed
birthdays.
us. Yeah,
Probably.
we had a path there, right?
What's our actual topic?
I guess I don't know how to phrase it in a way that like doesn't sound negative, right? Like
We haven't officially titled it.
yeah,
yet.
we have it. So like Liz, I mean, we've talked about this before, just how women, females treat or perceive other women in the workplace. And I think that you and I have shared stories over the years, like, and it like is relatable, and it's kind of sucks that it's relatable. And so we were like, maybe we should talk about it, because I think it's one of those things that people are scared to talk about, but it should be talked about, I guess.
So where
I
do
don't
we
know that
wanna
I'll have
start?
much to contribute to this topic, so I'll just try to moderate.
But you could have seen it though. I mean, I remember the first time that like it was brought to my attention, right? So like this, and like then looking back in my career, I can think of all these circumstances where it did happen. I just didn't see it from that lens or realize that that's what it was. But it was a male boss who told me, who said, hey, have you ever noticed that this happens in a meeting? I think I've mentioned on the podcast before that a female leader would type while a woman was talking and then stop typing while a male was talking. Like she would give the male her attention, but not the female. And it's, she didn't even know, right? It's unconscious. Like she wasn't intentionally doing it. But it was a male boss who pointed that out to me, Merlin. So I think that
Yeah.
you can still see those things go on, even if you're not a female.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was gonna ask is like, is it socially acceptable or like okay for a male that's witnessing like female and female bias to call it out if he feels like they're not aware that they're doing it? I mean, I would think that that would be helpful, but I could see how it would be a very potentially sensitive topic and difficult to do depending on like how well you knew the person. Like, actually, how did you, it seemed like that went over positively for you. Like it helped that you were aware of that then.
Yeah, but I wasn't like, but
So
nobody had ever
involved.
told her.
Right.
I was just a bystander.
Right.
And I think it was more like, and I do this now with my team, because until Monday of this week, my entire team was females. So I've tried very hard to like educate them on like the things that I've learned or I've seen. Like this is a story I've told them many times, right? Because I think it's important for females to build each other up and like not innately just be jealous or whatever it is. So he told me that, it was like, hey, you'll notice this in meetings. And he's like, I'm telling you so that you don't
was
unconsciously start to
educational.
build these things, but nobody had ever told her. Nobody ever confronted her about it.
That's too bad.
Mhm. It is.
Like, I feel like someone should have tried.
But like, how do you approach that subject, I guess, is
That's what I'm saying. Actually hard.
I wonder if that would actually be easier coming from a male coworker, right? Because,
She'd respect it more.
well,
Oh my God.
if she's
so
doing, if
horrible.
she's,
I mean-
but like if she's biased against females, like if a female tells her, she's gonna be like, "You be like."
unless she doesn't know. I
Or
mean,
sh-
she doesn't know she's biased, right? So like, but that would
perhaps
come
I think
out,
I think
guess.
if we start from the assumption that she doesn't know, like that it's unconscious, then realistically, no matter who brings it up to her, she'll probably be like, oh, like I didn't know, I didn't realize, so sorry. And like then she'll start to think about like noticing it in herself and stopping that behavior in herself. But there is also the chance that it was like at least semi-conscious, right? That like she was thinking, oh, a woman's talking, I don't have to care, type. Oh, a man's talking, I better listen. Or maybe she's thinking, a man's talking, I have to listen, or he's going to judge me, versus a woman is talking, she's not going to judge me. Like it could have been, instead of her like putting less stock in what that person is saying, It could have been more concern about how that person was perceiving her. Maybe I don't know. If the male coworker had told her, "Hey, like I'm noticing this and it seems kind of weird to me," that might make it seem like less of an attack because he doesn't have any like stake in it.
He's having skin in the game.
Right. He's sort of like an impartial observer being like, I'm noticing this and it seems weird to me. Do whatever you want with it. And then she can do whatever she wants with it. Versus, if you had said something to her, then she might think that you were attacking her, or I don't know, it might come off as more aggressive or confrontational. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my point, like, I agree with you, Merlin. Like, my point was that whether it's a conscious or unconscious thing, like, she's illustrating a bias. She's biased against females, so having a female like broach that topic with her is leaving room for her bias to come out, whether that's intentional or not.
I think the problem though is that this is really common. Like, I know whenever I bring up that story to people, like, hey, this happened, or like every female I've ever talked to has been like, oh yeah, this time in the workplace this woman did this to me, or like this. Like, I just don't understand why I don't know if it's like jealousy, or if like women, like it's hard for them to support other women because they're like, oh, like to get there they had to do this, or I don't know what it is.
I don't know if anyone knows for sure what causes it. I mean, there's theories out there, right? Which both of those are theories.
Mm-hmm. But it's just too common. Like you don't see it as much in like the male against male world in the workplace. Like, they're kind of just, everyone gets along or they don't get along, but there's no like personal attacks or something like that on each other.
Well, I females were expected to communicate a different way and be less direct. And so with that comes like passive aggressiveness. I think if like and I'm stereotyping across the board here, but like if two men have an issue with each other, like stereotypically, like they can just kind of like be direct about it and like move on, where a female might not feel like she can do that because of how it could be perceived as being too aggressive in the workplace.
Or if she is, then she gets a reputation for being mean,
right?
Or
being
like
a
horrible
bitch.
person. Yeah, basically. I didn't say it, Liz, but yeah,
like, we're gonna end up using that word on some point, right?
But it's true. Like,
yeah,
like I've had female bosses before who are very direct and just say what it is, and everyone's like, oh, I wouldn't want to be her. Like, look at what she had to do to herself to like become a leader. It's awful, but it's horrible. But that's the perception. But then, a male leader talks or says the same thing, and everyone's like, oh, look at him just speaking his opinion.
He's just an assertive leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Strong.
Mm-hmm.
A strong leader.
Yeah, women are their own worst critics. I've never like
women are harder on other women than men are on each other or on women, for sure. So why? Do we care about the why, or do we care about fixing it?
I mean, I think you have to understand a little bit maybe of the why in order to fix it, right? Like, I think that calling it out. So to Merlin, to your point, right? Like, I never would have thought of such a thing until somebody said, hey, did you notice that this happens? Mm-hmm. And now it makes me very like conscious of it. So like I've had female coworkers where I catch myself being like, oh my gosh, this person is like, making judgments about them, or, saying things about them behind their back, so petty, but you do it. And then I'll pause and I'll be like, wait, do I have this opinion of them because they're a female, or do I have this opinion of them because of who they are as a person and the way, like the kind of coworker they are? And sometimes it's been, no, like they're a female. I see them as competition. I am jealous that they can do this. And so I've had to put myself into check. And I mean, I do it. I know like, if anybody says that they've never done it, I'm sorry, they're lying. It happens. And so, but like, I think knowing that it can, and like putting yourself into a position where you can call yourself out, like taking a pause, I think
it's checking yourself, like awareness of like, oh, I'm feeling this or thinking this because of this innate bias that I'm not, it's just happening. Mm-hmm. But then not acting, like you just need to stop it and like reflect on like why, instead of letting that perpetuate on and like your actions and words towards that other person.
Well, and I've had a female coworker where I even talked to about it. I said, hey, like I like was starting to feel like this, or like I had this perception, but I want to talk about it with you because let's work on it together. So I feel like sometimes
what did you think that what did you tell her? Like,
I
did you
just
tell her
he-
specifics of how you were feeling?
not specifics. Well, I didn't tell her specifics about what she was doing, but I was
Yeah.
like, hey, like when we first started working together, I would feel like this and, like certain things. And I was like, but, I want to tell you, like, I've noticed it's because we're both women and we need to support each other. Like women already have enough of a difficulty in the workplace, especially in technology, which we all work in, that like we can't fight against each other as well.
I
And
have
she took it actually
definitely,
really well
yeah.
because she's like me where she was very like conscious of it as well. Like she's been trying to work on it herself. So like it actually was a very good conversation. I don't know if I would have that with just anybody.
No, I think you gotta feel that one out. I was gonna say I've definitely experienced that, like personally, like myself, like thinking or feeling that way, but I don't think I've ever actually had a direct conversation with the other person about it. Like I haven't needed to, or it hasn't been the right situation where I feel like the relationship was strong enough to like have that be helpful versus harmful. Because I think if it's not like you don't have that trust or it's already super toxic, like throwing that out there is probably not going to make it better. Like if you're not close to each other already.
Do you think that would be a good time for a male ally? Like I'm trying to think about
I'm thinking about like situations where I wish I could have approached someone but felt like scared or especially if you're talking like it's your superior. Like I think a male ally in that situation is super helpful.
because like, I don't know, through this conversation, I've been thinking like, how could someone like me be helpful in this scenario? And like the more that I think about it, like maybe in that sort of toxic scenario, again, having that sort of like impartial observer in a male ally to approach the person and be like, I'm seeing this from my perspective. Like it doesn't seem very fair to this other woman that you're sort of being abusive to. Like, have you considered this? Like maybe you want to rethink your approach or something, and then just sort of like back away and see what happens.
I also think just education. Like I had a male boss who was like, hey, so Merlin, like you could bring up instances, even if somebody's not involved in it. I think just educating people of like, hey, did you notice this? This is a problem. It's like women using just in emails. I use just in every email I've ever written, and I have to go back and rewrite it. So, but again, it was the same male boss who taught me that. So I think it's just education as well. So if you see it, even if that woman is not involved in that specific situation, calling it out, I think helps.
Yeah,
And I think
so.
it's easier for an ally in that situation to perhaps bring it to a third party's attention as well.
Right. I mean, that's obviously a lot less like pressure and like responsibility on the third party. Just be like, well, I'm not directly involved in this, but I'm noticing it. And I think it's a problem. And I think it should stop, but it's not, it's not somebody that's being mean to me directly. So I don't know. It's interesting because you're right, actually, when you're like, well, everybody experiences this or everybody does this. Cause I feel like I've heard these stories from other people before as well. Like other situations of like women feeling to be made smaller by other women in the workplace or judged a lot more, or well, I can't wear things like that because so and so is going to like give me a look about it. None of my male coworkers have ever commented on this, but it's always the women who are like giving me the side eye. I'm like,
we have a lot more to like maneuver around and take. Like we're constantly analyzing like all of our communication and actions and like physical appearance to like make sure we're fitting into that narrow little like area that's acceptable for both men and women where you belong in society. Like we spend a lot more time and energy trying to fit that than I think, like your point, Merlin, like guys just don't even think about that. They just are themselves.
Well, yeah,
a lot. I'm
advantage.
Generalizing.
Yeah, no, but I think that's one advantage of, especially like in tech, being in a male dominated industry, in male dominated economy generally, is men have that level of comfort because the system was built by them for them, and everybody else has to try to fit into it. And so we've sort of like set the ground rules, and everybody else is trying to figure out like, well, how do I play with those ground rules? But it's going to be difficult for anybody who's not already in that club, basically.
Well, and I think those ground rules like are part of the reason why women are harder on each other. Like one of the theories of why women are more judgy or more harsh on other females is because there is like only one spot at the top. Women are still a minority in places of leadership. And so like if you're at the top as a female, you don't want the younger, like you don't want competition for that spot at the top. And so like that's part of it was built by men for men, and like that's causing part of the problem. I'm not saying like that's the only reason why women are harder on each other, but I think that's a factor for sure.
Well, yeah, because anytime I think a woman sees somebody up and coming against them, they think of it instead of like, oh, how can we work together to make things better? It's you're after my role, or
you better not
after...
outshine me. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's immediately a battle rather than like something you can do together.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like women that are successful too, a lot of times feel like they've sacrificed so much and worked so hard to get where they're at that they aren't going to give that up easily. And they also expect the up and coming females to suffer just as much as they did. Otherwise it wouldn't be fair. Right. But like that shouldn't be the expectation. Like just because you had to do crazy hour weeks or like sacrifice your personal or family time or whatever, like doesn't mean that the next generation should have to go through that. Like you should want to help stop that, not perpetuate that forward.
I agree. I think that there's this sense of, well, I did that, so you have to go through it too,
right.
Like you said, Liz. But also like, I think the mentality needs to change of we need to pave the path so that it's not as difficult.
Yeah, it shouldn't be as
folks
hard
behind us, for the women behind us. Like they shouldn't have to sacrifice, getting the top job at the law firm, right? Like that's, I think the biggest example of this that I've seen is, the partner position. There's always one female partner, but if you have a kid, if you have a child, go out on maternity leave, you immediately give up that because you're out for 3 months. So you're not putting your work first, and then somebody else that doesn't have kids or whatever gets moved into that position. But as females, I would want to help change that so that women that have kids can still move up into the positions that they should based on their contribution and leadership ability, not the fact that they've worked 80 hours a week.
Right. Kids having a family is a common example, but I think every person deserves to have whatever version of balance it is, like makes sense for them in a personal life and free time. And so like, even if you don't have kids, like you shouldn't have to kill yourself to get that top position. I mean, but that's a common example. And there's clearly a bias against people that take, and paternity leave too. Like I've heard people complain, like, why is he taking so much time off? Like he's a guy, like he shouldn't be taking the full paternity leave, like things like that. So definitely a stigma around like taking time off for family or having kids and being gone from work. And like, do they deserve the promotion or raise? Like that comes up a lot.
Yeah, it's all about your dedication. Are you dedicated enough? Are you willing to sacrifice your entire life and at least one of your kidneys? If you're not, you don't deserve the promotion.
But it shouldn't be like
it's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody. Perpetuating that system is just making it worse for everybody forever.
So how do you break that? Like, so I think we've obviously diagnosed the problem. We've talked about where it's super prevalent, right? In the workplace, especially tech. I mean, how do we, knowing that this is an issue, like what could we do differently, or what advice could we give people?
So I'm going to use an analogy. I love to use analogies, as anyone who listens to the podcast knows. But like, have you ever noticed that when you like buy a new car, suddenly you see that same model of car like everywhere else on the road? And maybe this doesn't apply to anybody who drives a Toyota Camry because they're already everywhere on the road, but
it still applies.
Like, I feel like it still applies. Like I definitely remember this happened to me. I was like super excited as a very young man when I was actually young and not just thought that I was young, that I bought a Subaru, and I'd like never seen them on the road before I bought one. And then I'm driving around in my car and I'm like, oh, there's one. Oh, there's another one. Oh, where'd all these Subarus come from? Like they just appeared out of nowhere. And it was because now I was looking for them. Like my brain was actively looking for them instead of them just blending into the background. And I think where I'm taking this analogy is, if you know that this is a thing that happens, you're more likely to start noticing it in your own environment, in your own workplace. And I feel like noticing it is the first step, because after you notice it, then you can decide what to do with it. And maybe what you do with it is absolutely nothing because it's not that big of a deal in that particular situation, or you're afraid to rock the boat, you don't want to get fired, whatever. Or maybe that's something as you find an ally, or maybe that's sometimes you have a direct conversation. But I feel like you can't do anything about it if you don't notice it in the first place. So I don't know. I guess I'd start with notice it.
I think that was one of your better analogies, by the way, Marilyn. I liked it.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It was good. And I feel like our generation is noticing it more. Like we talk about it a decent amount. And so I think that is happening. I get the sense that people are uncomfortable with what the next step is and tend to ignore it more. That's what I've
Could be.
observed.
I think like you raise a good point there. Like our generation, I think, first of all, is noticing a lot of things and trying to change a lot. But the people that are in leadership are in the generations before us. So educating them about it. So I could see, change is slow, right? But I think I could see change happening maybe more quickly with like our generation and the couple generations after us, because they do know these things. It's just frustrating. You might not be able to adjust it or change it right now because of the current people that are in leadership. You wish that you could do more. And I don't know how to approach that, I guess, to your point.
Some things will take time. I guess I would also encourage any men who are listening to start noticing it too. To both of your points, like, yes, our generation is noticing it more, but it's probably still mostly the women that are noticing it, the people who are involved and like feeling it. And it's easy for men to just be like, well, it doesn't happen to me, so like I don't notice, I don't pay any attention. I think if more men pay attention and notice it, then they can act as more supportive allies and help actually shift the culture.
I think noticing it and talking about it. So like maybe people are starting to notice it, but you never bring it up. And then over happy hour, women share their horror stories of the things that they've gone through with other women in the workplace, but that's all that happens, right? So I think that when you notice it, say something to somebody. Like it doesn't have to be the people involved. Just start the conversation somewhere, and not just saving it up for like those horror stories, which Liz, you and I have done a lot. But I think like, but it's true. But we're doing this, right? We're raising it up to a bigger platform. And so I think that just starting that conversation, regardless of how awkward it is, it might be weird and uncomfortable, but I think over time it could become easier.
Be the change. Isn't there something about that? Be the change that you want to see in the world.
I think a president said that.
That's a quote.
I'm gonna Google the quote and put it.
I feel like it's a quote. I'm not gonna try to guess at who it was.
Somebody smarter than me came up with that.
Liz, do you have any other like thoughts or things that you want to say on the
I
topic?
mean, this is a hard one to like be like, here's an action item and how you can go help fix it. I agree with everything that was said. I think we should raise it up. I think we should talk about it. I think men should observe and communicate about it more. But I think just like personally too, like just trying to make sure that you aren't doing that, and that you're being as positive and supportive to others as possible and just like unbiased in general. And I think like if you take care of yourself and you don't get into that mindset of like, oh, I had to suffer and I had to sacrifice, so I'm angry, I'm going to take it out on everyone beneath me. Like if you take care of yourself and like you're in a good spot, then hopefully it's easier for you not to push shit on other people like in that you work with. I guess I'm boiling it down to like, in a way, like self-care and prioritizing yourself. And if everyone is like a better version of themselves, then I think that would help contribute to like alleviating the problem of women picking on each other or judging each other. I think a lot of times that happens because they're struggling with something internally, or like they've suffered, and so like that's why they're acting that way.
I agree. I think that self-care, I don't think enough people think about like taking care of themselves outside of the workplace, so everything boils up.
Right, because if you're not taking care of yourself, of course you're gonna not be a good person at work consistently.
Yeah, I agree with that. Merlin, anything else advice you want to give to allies out there?
I mean, the only advice that I would give is be allies.
I know this is a tough subject for us all. Like, I know we were all kind of like hesitant to like even bring it up, but I think that that's like the first step for everybody, is just to start talking about it. So I appreciate everyone that has made it this far through the podcast, and hope you guys can start, these conversations, as uncomfortable as they are, they have to be talked about. So thanks for joining in today, and appreciate you making it through.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at DynamicsHotDish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.